when my son-in-law looked me straight in the eye and called me a senile old fool who doesn't understand anything. I just smiled and nodded. He had no idea that the, quote, confused old man had been recording every word he said for the past 3 weeks. By the time I was done with him, he'd learned exactly how sharp my mind really was. You won't believe what I caught him doing on camera. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window of the house I'd built with my own hands 47 years ago, casting long shadows across the oak table where Linda and I had shared thousands of meals together. It was Tuesday, September 15th, and the grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 9:47 a.m., just as it had every quarter hour since Linda bought it for our 25th wedding anniversary. I set down my coffee cup and looked around the kitchen that still bore traces of my wife's presence everywhere. The yellow curtains she'd sewn herself in 1983, the herb garden visible through the window that she'd tended until the cancer made it impossible, the small, chipped ceramic rooster on the windowsill that she'd insisted was charming despite my protests that it was just clutter. Linda had been gone for 8 months now, but the house still felt like it was waiting for her to come home. "Frank, you're up early again." The voice startled me from my memories. Tyler emerged from the guest bedroom, stretching and yawning, his dark hair perfectly styled despite having just woken up. At 35, my son-in-law had the kind of confident bearing that some people mistake for competence. Unfortunately, my daughter Jennifer had been one of those people. "I've been getting up at this time for 40 years, I replied, not bothering to hide my irritation. "It's not early for me." Tyler patted to the coffee pot in his expensive pajama set, pouring himself a cup from the pot I'd made an hour earlier. Right. Sometimes I forget how different things are for your generation. Early to bed, early to rise, all that. My generation. As if being 73 meant I belonged to some obsolete species that couldn't adapt to modern life. Tyler had been living in my house for 6 months now, ever since he'd temporarily lost his job at Hartwell Insurance. What had started as a 2-week visit while he got back on his feet had stretched into half a year of watching this man systematically take over my home, my routine, and worst of all, my daughter's mind. I thought about the early days of my marriage to Linda, how we'd saved every penny for 3 years to buy this land, how I'd worked double shifts at the construction company while she waitressed at Murphy's Diner. We'd drawn up the house plans together at this very table, dreaming about the family we'd raise here, the life we'd build together. Jennifer had been born in the master bedroom upstairs because Linda had gone into labor during a snowstorm that made the roads impassable. I'd delivered my own daughter with nothing but a first aid manual and Linda's steady coaching. "You can do this, Frank," she'd whispered between contractions. "We can do anything together." And we had. 37 years of marriage, through my construction business's ups and downs, through Jennifer's teenage rebellions and college years, through Linda's battle with cancer that had lasted 2 agonizing years before finally taking her from me last January. Now Tyler was suggesting that everything Linda and I had built, everything we'd worked for, was somehow beyond my capability to manage alone. "Frank," Tyler said, settling into what had been Linda's chair at the kitchen table, "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday." I had no memory of any conversation with Tyler yesterday. In fact, I'd spent most of yesterday working in my garage, organizing tools and avoiding Tyler's constant presence in my house. "What conversation?" I asked. Tyler's expression shifted to one of gentle concern, the way you might look at a confused child. "About the bills, Frank, remember? You were having trouble with the electric company payment, and we talked about how maybe it's time to consider getting some help with the day-to-day management of things." I set my coffee cup down carefully, studying Tyler's face. There had been no conversation about bills yesterday. More importantly, I hadn't had any trouble with any payments. I'd been managing my finances successfully since I was 18 years old. "I don't remember any such conversation," I said slowly. "Oh, Frank," Tyler shook his head sadly, "this is exactly what I'm worried about. These little memory gaps are happening more and more often." Memory gaps. As if forgetting a conversation that never happened was a sign of mental decline rather than evidence that Tyler was lying. Over the next few days, I began to notice a disturbing pattern in Tyler's behavior. It started with small things. Comments about my confusion over routine tasks I'd been doing for decades. Suggestions that I'd misplaced items that I distinctly remembered putting in specific places. gentle corrections about conversations that I had no memory of having. Thursday morning, I found Tyler in my home office, sitting at the desk where Linda and I used to pay bills together every Sunday evening. He had my bank statements spread out in front of him like he was conducting an audit. "Tyler," I said from the doorway, "what are you doing with my financial documents?" He didn't even look embarrassed. Instead, he glanced up with that same patronizing concern I was beginning to recognize as his default expression when caught in inappropriate behavior. "Just helping you get organized, Frank," he said, gathering the statements into a neat pile. "Jennifer asked me to take a look at your accounts, make sure everything's in order. She's been worried about some irregularities she's noticed." This was news to me. Jennifer worked 12-hour shifts as a surgical nurse at Denver General, and our conversations over the past few months had been limited to brief check-ins about my health and weekly grocery shopping trips. She'd never expressed any concerns about my financial management, and she certainly wouldn't have asked Tyler to investigate my personal bank accounts without discussing it with me first. "What kind of irregularities?" I asked. Tyler sighed, the way you might when dealing with someone who was being deliberately obtuse. "Frank, we've talked about this. The missed payments, the duplicate transactions, the checks written to cash that you can't remember authorizing. Jennifer's concerned that you might be experiencing some cognitive decline that's affecting your financial decision-making." Every word Tyler spoke was a lie. There were no missed payments. I had automatic deductions set up for all my regular bills, and I checked my accounts online every week. There were no duplicate transactions or mysterious checks written to cash. My financial records were meticulous, organized, and completely up to date. But Tyler was presenting these lies with such confidence, such detailed specificity, that for a moment I wondered if I was missing something. Could there be financial irregularities that I wasn't aware of? Was it possible that my age was affecting my ability to manage money properly? Then I looked at Tyler's hands and noticed something that made my blood run cold. He was wearing latex gloves. "Why are you wearing gloves to handle my bank statements?" I asked. Tyler looked down at his hands as if noticing the gloves for the first time. "Oh, these?" He laughed, but it sounded forced. "I was cleaning the gutters earlier, must have forgotten to take them off." It was barely 9 a.m., and it hadn't rained in 3 weeks. There was no reason to clean gutters on a perfectly dry Thursday morning. More importantly, Tyler had never shown any interest in house maintenance during his 6-month stay. I'd been doing all the yard work and repairs myself, despite his presence and supposed eagerness to help. The latex gloves were for fingerprints. Tyler was handling my financial documents while wearing gloves so he wouldn't leave evidence of his unauthorized access to my personal information. "I'd like those documents back," I said firmly. Tyler handed over the statements with obvious reluctance. "Of course, Frank, I was just trying to help. But you might want to call the bank tomorrow and ask them to explain some of these discrepancies." I took the papers and examined them carefully. Every transaction was exactly what it should be. Every balance was correct. Every automated payment had gone through on schedule. There were no discrepancies, no irregularities, no signs of confusion or mismanagement. Tyler was gaslighting me, using invented financial problems to make me question my own competence. That evening, I sat in my den looking through photo albums from my 47 years in this house. The early pictures showed Linda and me as newlyweds, young and optimistic, standing in front of the bare foundation where our dream home would rise. I remembered every detail of those early days, how we'd lived in a tiny apartment downtown while I worked construction during the day and built our house on weekends and evenings. Linda had been my partner in every sense of the word. She'd mixed concrete, handed me tools, even learned basic electrical work so she could help with the wiring. "We're building our forever," she used to say. "It has to be perfect." Friday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was working in my garden, pruning the rose bushes that Linda had planted along our back fence, when I heard Mrs. Patterson calling my name from her yard next door. Evelyn Patterson was 78 years old and had lived next door to Linda and me for over 30 years. She was sharp as a tack, with the kind of no-nonsense personality that came from raising 6 children and teaching elementary school for 4 decades. "Frank," she called, walking over to the fence that separated our properties. "Can I have a word with you?" I set down my pruning shears and walked over to meet her. Evelyn looked troubled, wringing her hands in a way that was completely out of character for her usual confident demeanor. "What's on your mind, Evelyn?" She glanced toward my house, making sure we weren't being overheard. "It's about your son-in-law, Frank. I've been seeing some things that worry me." "What kind of things?" Evelyn lowered her voice. "Yesterday afternoon, while you were at the grocery store, I saw him in your backyard with another man. They were looking at your house like they were appraising it, pointing at the roof, the windows, walking around the foundation. The other man was taking pictures." My blood chilled. "Pictures of what?" "Everything. The exterior, the yard, even your garage. Then they went inside, and I could see them through your windows, going from room to room. The other man was writing things down in a notebook." I felt sick. While I'd been grocery shopping, Tyler had been giving someone a tour of my property, documenting it as if he was preparing to sell it. "Did you recognize the other man?" I asked. "Never seen him before. Middle-aged, professional-looking, driving a silver sedan with what looked like a real estate company logo on the door." Evelyn paused, studying my face. "Frank, I don't like to interfere in other people's business, but Linda was my dear friend, and I promised her I'd keep an eye on you." "Something isn't right about that boy." "What do you mean?" "He's been asking questions around the neighborhood. Casual-like, but questions all the same. About your health, your daily routine, whether you've been acting confused or forgetful. Mrs. Henderson told me he even asked her if she'd noticed you leaving your car running or forgetting to lock your doors." The systematic nature of Tyler's information gathering was breathtaking. He wasn't just manipulating me directly. He was building a case against me using my own neighbors as unwitting witnesses. "Has anyone seen signs of confusion or forgetfulness?" I asked. Evelyn snorted. "Frank Calloway, you're sharper than men half your age. You still maintain this house better than most people a third your age. You drive perfectly well, and you manage your own affairs without any help from anyone. But Tyler's been telling people that you're declining and that the family is concerned about your ability to live independently." "He's telling people I'm declining?" "Last week he told the mailman that you've been having trouble remembering to bring in your mail. He told the UPS driver that you sometimes forget what you've ordered and get confused about deliveries. He even mentioned to Pastor Williams that you've been missing church because you can't remember what day services are held." Every one of these claims was a complete fabrication. I brought in my mail every day at exactly 3 p.m. when it was delivered. I rarely ordered anything online, so confusion about deliveries wasn't possible. And I'd been attending Sunday services at First Methodist for 43 years, sitting in the same pew that Linda and I had shared since we were newlyweds. Tyler was systematically destroying my reputation in the community, creating a false narrative of mental decline that would support whatever legal action he was planning. "Evelyn," I said quietly, "if I told you that Tyler was planning something that could hurt me, would you be willing to help me document it?" Her expression hardened with the determination I remembered from her teaching days, when she dealt with bullies and troublemakers with swift, decisive action. "Frank Calloway, Linda made me promise to look out for you. If that snake is planning to hurt you, you can count on me to help stop him." That afternoon, while Tyler was out running errands, which I'd noticed always took exactly 3 hours and involved no shopping bags upon his return, I began a systematic search of my own house. If Tyler was planning something involving my property, there might be evidence hidden somewhere. I started with the guest room where Tyler was staying. I'd given him privacy out of respect, but privacy was a privilege that had to be earned through trustworthy behavior. Tyler had forfeited that privilege when he started manipulating my neighbors and accessing my financial documents without permission. The room looked normal at first glance, but when I examined Tyler's belongings more carefully, I found things that made my stomach turn. Hidden in his laptop bag was a manila folder containing photocopies of my bank statements, insurance policies, and legal documents. Every page had been copied, some multiple times, with handwritten notes in the margins. Next to my life insurance policy, Tyler had written, "Beneficiary, Jennifer, daughter, amount, $250,000, no secondary beneficiary listed." Beside my property deed, he'd noted, "Sole ownership, no joint tenancy, value approximately $400,000 based on comparable sales." My investment account statements had been annotated with calculations, total retirement savings, $847,000. Monthly income from investments, $3,200. Tyler hadn't just been snooping through my finances, he'd been conducting a comprehensive inventory of my assets, calculating their value, and documenting the legal structures that governed their ownership. But the most chilling discovery was a business card tucked into the folder. Dr. Marcus Whitfield, geriatric psychiatrist, specializing in competency evaluations and guardianship assessments. I sat on Tyler's bed, holding the business card with trembling hands. The picture was becoming horrifyingly clear. Tyler wasn't just planning to steal from me or manipulate me. He was planning to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could gain legal control over my assets. My cell phone buzzed with a text message from Jennifer. "Dad, Tyler mentioned you've been having some memory issues. Are you feeling okay? Should I come by this weekend to check on you?" I stared at the message, realizing that Tyler's campaign against me was already working. My own daughter was beginning to believe that I needed supervision and intervention. Tyler was systematically poisoning my relationships while building a legal case to have me declared incompetent. But Tyler had made one critical error in his planning. He'd assumed that because I was 73 years old, I must be technologically illiterate and incapable of defending myself. He was about to learn just how wrong that assumption was. Saturday morning, I drove to Best Buy and walked into a world that would have intimidated me just a few months earlier. The store was filled with gleaming electronics, young employees who spoke in acronyms I didn't understand, and customers who seemed to navigate the technology landscape with effortless confidence. But Linda had always said that the day you stop learning is the day you start dying, and I wasn't ready to die yet. "Can I help you find something?" The young man who approached me couldn't have been older than 25, with earnest eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a name tag that read Kevin. "I need a security system for my house," I said. "Something that can record video and audio without being detected." Kevin's eyebrows rose slightly. "Are you looking to monitor a specific area, or do you want whole house coverage?" "Specific areas. I need to document what happens in certain rooms when I'm not present." Kevin led me to a display of small, discrete cameras that looked nothing like the bulky security equipment I'd expected. "These wireless cameras are perfect for covert monitoring," he explained, picking up a device no bigger than a thumb drive. "Motion-activated, HD video quality, night vision capability, and they connect directly to your smartphone via an app." "I don't have a smartphone," I admitted. Kevin didn't even blink. "No problem. We can set you up with one. For what you're trying to do, you'll want the latest iPhone with plenty of storage and a reliable data plan." For the next 2 hours, Kevin patiently taught me everything I needed to know. He showed me how to operate the iPhone, how to download and use the camera app, how to position the cameras for optimal coverage, and how to save recordings to cloud storage so they couldn't be tampered with or deleted. "The beauty of this system," Kevin explained, "is that everything is controlled remotely. You can monitor live feeds from anywhere, receive motion alerts, and access your recordings from any internet connection. The cameras are virtually invisible when properly positioned." I bought 3 cameras, an iPhone, and a cloud storage plan. The total cost was over $1,200. But I considered it an investment in my freedom and safety. Kevin even offered to come to my house that afternoon to help me install the system and make sure everything was working properly. "My grandfather is about your age," he said. "If someone was trying to take advantage of him, I'd want someone to help him fight back." Sunday afternoon, while Tyler was visiting his brother in Boulder, or so he claimed, Kevin arrived at my house with a toolbox and a patient attitude that reminded me of my younger self when I was teaching Jennifer how to change a tire. We spent 3 hours positioning cameras in strategic locations. The first camera went in my home office, concealed behind books on a shelf with a clear view of my desk and filing cabinets. The second camera was hidden in my bedroom, positioned to monitor anyone entering the room or approaching my dresser where I kept important documents. The third camera went in the living room, disguised as a decorative object on the mantelpiece. Kevin showed me how to test each camera using the iPhone app, how to adjust motion sensitivity, and how to review recorded footage. The video quality was remarkable, crystal clear during the day, and surprisingly detailed at night using infrared technology. "The motion alerts will ping your phone whenever someone enters a monitored area," Kevin explained. "You can watch live feeds in real time or review recordings later. Everything automatically saves to cloud storage, so even if someone finds and destroys the cameras, you'll still have the evidence." After Kevin left, I spent the evening practicing with the system, learning to navigate the app and familiarize myself with the controls. By bedtime, I felt confident that I could document whatever Tyler was planning. I didn't have to wait long to put my new skills to the test. Monday morning at 8:45 a.m., while I was in the shower, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the home office camera. I quickly dried off and checked the live feed. Tyler was at my desk, but this time he wasn't just looking through papers. He was photographing them with his phone, page by page, creating a digital record of my financial documents, insurance policies, and legal papers. I watched in silent fury as he opened my bank statements and carefully photographed each page, paying particular attention to my account balances and transaction history. Then he moved to my investment portfolio, documenting my stock holdings, retirement accounts, and savings bonds with the methodical precision of someone conducting a professional audit. When he finished with the financial documents, Tyler opened my personal files and began photographing my medical records, prescription information, and even old letters from my doctor discussing routine health concerns from years past. The violation was breathtaking. This man was systematically stealing my most private information, probably to use against me in legal proceedings designed to have me declared incompetent. But it got worse. Tuesday afternoon, while I was at my weekly grocery shopping trip, Tyler had a visitor. The camera in my living room captured every word of their conversation. A woman in her 50s, professionally dressed with a briefcase, sat across from Tyler on my couch. The audio quality was excellent. I could hear every word clearly. "Mr. Thompson," she said, opening her briefcase and removing a stack of documents, "I've reviewed the materials you provided, and I believe we have a strong foundation for a competency evaluation." Tyler leaned forward eagerly. "Dr. Whitfield said it was just a matter of documenting the pattern properly." Dr. Whitfield. The name from the business card I'd found in Tyler's room. The financial confusion, the missed appointments, the inability to recognize familiar documents, it all supports your concerns about Mr. Calloway's declining mental state. She handed Tyler a clipboard. "We'll need you to complete these behavioral assessment forms, documenting specific incidents of confusion or agitation." "How long does the process usually take?" Tyler asked. "Once we file the petition, the court will order a psychological evaluation. If Dr. Whitfield's assessment supports our documentation, we can have guardianship transferred within 60 days. Guardianship. They were planning to have Tyler appointed as my legal guardian, giving him complete control over my finances, my property, and my personal decisions. "And his daughter?" the woman asked. "Jennifer, is it? She's on board with this?" Tyler's hesitation was barely perceptible, but I caught it. "Jennifer's been resistant to acknowledging her father's decline. She's emotionally attached, you understand. Sometimes family members can't see what's obvious to others." The woman nodded sympathetically. "That's very common. Adult children often deny their parents' deteriorating condition. But once the legal proceedings begin, she'll see that this is in her father's best interest." My hands were shaking as I realized the full scope of Tyler's betrayal. He wasn't just planning to steal my assets. He was planning to destroy my relationship with my daughter in the process. Wednesday morning brought another revelation that left me reeling. While reviewing the previous day's footage, I discovered that Tyler's visitor hadn't been his first conspirator. The cameras had captured him on the phone multiple times, and when I listened carefully to the recordings, a horrifying picture emerged. Tyler was part of a larger operation that specifically targeted elderly homeowners with significant assets. The phone conversations revealed a network of corrupt medical professionals, lawyers, and real estate agents who worked together to identify vulnerable seniors and systematically strip them of their wealth. "The Colorado case worked perfectly," Tyler said during one recorded call. "The old man never knew what hit him. We had him declared incompetent, transferred guardianship, and sold his property within 4 months. He's in a state facility now, and the family thinks it was all necessary for his own protection." The casual way Tyler discussed destroying someone's life was chilling. This wasn't his first victim. It was just his latest. "Frank's got more assets than most of our targets," Tyler continued. "The house alone is worth $400,000, plus he's got nearly $1 million in retirement savings. The best part is, he's completely isolated. The wife died 8 months ago, the daughter works 12-hour shifts and barely visits. No one's paying close enough attention to interfere." Isolated. Tyler had been deliberately preventing Jennifer from visiting more often, creating the isolation that made me vulnerable to his scheme. "What about the neighbors?" asked the voice on the other end of the call. "Couple of old busybodies, but nothing we can't handle. I've been laying groundwork about his mental decline for months. By the time we file for guardianship, half the neighborhood will be ready to testify that he needs professional care." The systematic nature of Tyler's manipulation was breathtaking. He'd been planning this for months, maybe even since Linda's death, positioning himself as the concerned son-in-law while building a case to destroy my independence. But Tyler's confidence was about to become his downfall. Thursday evening, I sat at my kitchen table with printed copies of every piece of evidence I'd gathered. Video recordings of Tyler stealing my personal information. Audio recordings of his conspiracy calls. Photographs of the documents he'd hidden in his room. Financial records proving that all his claims about my confusion were fabricated. I had everything I needed to destroy Tyler's scheme and send him to prison. When Tyler came downstairs for his usual morning coffee routine, I was waiting for him. "Good morning, Tyler," I said calmly, gesturing to the chair across from me. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation." Tyler's eyes immediately went to the manila folders spread across the table, and I saw his confident expression flicker for just a moment. "Frank," he said, forcing his usual patronizing smile, "you're up early today. How are we feeling?" "I'm feeling quite sharp, actually," I replied. "Sharp enough to know exactly what you've been doing in my house for the past 6 months." Tyler sat down slowly, his eyes never leaving the documents on the table. "I'm not sure what you mean." I opened the first folder and pulled out a printed photograph. "This is you, photographing my bank statements in my home office. The timestamp shows Monday morning at 8:47 a.m. Tyler's face went pale as he recognized the image. I opened the second folder. "This is an audio recording of your conversation with Dr. Whitfield's associate, discussing the timeline for having me declared incompetent." I pressed play on my phone, and Tyler's own voice filled the kitchen. "We can have guardianship transferred within 60 days. The color drained completely from Tyler's face. "And this," I said, opening the third folder, "is documentation of your previous victims. The Colorado case you mentioned, where you successfully destroyed an elderly man's life and had him committed to a state facility." Tyler's mouth opened and closed wordlessly. "You see, Tyler," I continued, meeting his eyes directly, "you made a critical error in your planning. You assumed that because I'm 73 years old, I must be technologically illiterate and incapable of defending myself. You assumed that because I trusted you initially, I would never think to protect myself when that trust was betrayed." I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 73 years, but also feeling more alert and powerful than I had in months. "You called me a senile old fool," I said quietly, "but the only fool in this room is the man who thought he could outsmart someone with 7 decades of life experience." Tyler finally found his voice. "Frank, please, you have to understand. I was only trying to help you. Jennifer was worried about your mental state, and I was gathering information to get you the care you need." I pulled out my phone and showed him the live camera feed from my home office. "Tyler, this conversation is being recorded. Every lie you tell is just adding to the evidence against you." For the first time since I'd known him, Tyler looked genuinely frightened. Within an hour of my confrontation with Tyler, I was on the phone with Detective Sarah Rodriguez from the Denver Police Department's Elder Abuse Division. Detective Rodriguez was professional, thorough, and grimly familiar with cases like mine. "Mr. Calloway," she said after reviewing the evidence I'd gathered, "this is one of the most well-documented cases of attempted elderly fraud I've ever seen. You've essentially conducted a professional investigation." Tyler had tried to leave immediately after our kitchen conversation, but I'd calmly informed him that leaving the state while under investigation for elder abuse was a felony. I'd also mentioned that I'd already contacted the police and that Detective Rodriguez was on her way to interview him. The formal charges included attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, theft of personal information, elderly abuse, and racketeering as part of a criminal enterprise. The evidence was overwhelming. Hours of video and audio recordings, financial documents, and witness testimony from neighbors who confirmed Tyler's systematic campaign to undermine my reputation. Jennifer arrived 3 hours later, having driven straight from the hospital when I called her. She was devastated, angry, and ashamed that she'd been manipulated into enabling Tyler's scheme. "Dad, I am so sorry," she said, crying at my kitchen table while I made her tea. "He convinced me you were getting confused, that you needed help but were too proud to ask for it. I thought I was giving you space to accept assistance gracefully." "Sweetheart," I said sitting beside her, "you trusted your husband. That's what you were supposed to do. The fault here is entirely his." "But I should have seen the signs. I should have talked to you directly instead of listening to his reports about your mental state." I took her hand, noting how much she looked like her mother when she was upset. "Jennifer, Tyler is a professional manipulator. He's done this before, to other families. He fooled a corrupt doctor, a crooked lawyer, and my own daughter. The only reason I caught him was because I got suspicious and had the technology to document his behavior. Jennifer looked at me with a mixture of pride and amazement. Dad, you set up hidden cameras and conducted a covert investigation like some kind of detective. Where did you learn to do that? I smiled, thinking of Kevin at Best Buy and his patient instruction. You'd be surprised what a senile old fool can accomplish when he puts his mind to it. Tyler's arrest was swift and decisive. Detective Rodriguez arrived with 2 uniformed officers, and Tyler was handcuffed in my living room while Mrs. Patterson watched from her front porch with grim satisfaction. Mr. Thompson, Detective Rodriguez said, reading Tyler his rights, you're under arrest for attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, theft of personal information, and elder abuse. Tyler tried one last manipulation attempt. This is all a misunderstanding, he pleaded. I was trying to help my father-in-law. He's not thinking clearly. Detective Rodriguez gestured to the evidence spread across my kitchen table. Mr. Thompson, we have you on camera stealing Mr. Calloway's financial documents. We have audio recordings of you planning his exploitation with criminal associates. Your own voice discussing previous victims makes this very clear. The investigation that followed revealed Tyler's true identity, Marcus Wilson, a career criminal with a 15-year history of elderly fraud across multiple states. The insurance job he'd lost was fictitious. The charming, successful man Jennifer had married didn't exist. Dr. Whitfield and Patricia Morrison were arrested within 48 hours. The criminal network I'd helped expose included at least 12 other victims across Colorado and Wyoming, elderly people who'd lost their homes, their savings, and their independence to these predators. 6 months later, I testified at Marcus Wilson's trial. The courtroom was packed with victims' families and elderly rights advocates. I spent 2 hours walking the jury through my evidence, showing them exactly how Marcus had systematically planned my exploitation. Mr. Calloway, the prosecutor asked, what made you realize you needed to protect yourself? I looked directly at Marcus, who sat at the defendant's table. When someone calls you a senile old fool, they're telling you exactly what they think of you. Marcus made the mistake of underestimating his target. He thought my age made me vulnerable, but it actually made me wiser. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Marcus Wilson was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Dr. Whitfield lost his medical license permanently and received 8 years. Patricia Morrison was disbarred and sentenced to 5 years. During sentencing, Judge Patricia Morrison addressed Marcus directly. You preyed on people in their most vulnerable moments, stealing not just their money but their dignity and independence. Your crimes represent a particular kind of evil, the deliberate exploitation of those who trusted you. The year following the trial brought healing and renewal to my relationship with Jennifer. She moved back into the house temporarily while processing her divorce, and the trauma of discovering her marriage had been built on lies. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, Jennifer said one evening. How he discouraged me from visiting, how he always seemed to know things about you that I hadn't told him. He was very good at what he did, I reminded her. This wasn't amateur manipulation. Marcus was part of a sophisticated criminal enterprise. Jennifer's divorce was finalized quickly. Once investigators revealed that Marcus had been married to 2 other women simultaneously, all part of different long-term cons targeting elderly family members. The person I thought I married never existed, Jennifer said. Tyler Thompson was a complete fiction. But the experience brought us closer than we'd been since Linda's death. We established new routines: Sunday dinners, weekly shopping trips, regular conversations about everything we'd avoided discussing during the months of Marcus's manipulation. 6 months after the trial, Detective Rodriguez called with an unexpected request. Frank, we have a situation in Phoenix that's remarkably similar to yours. Would you be willing to help another potential victim? The case involved an elderly widower whose son-in-law was displaying the same suspicious patterns Marcus had used against me. I flew to Phoenix and spent 3 days teaching Robert Chen how to protect himself, helping him install surveillance equipment and document his son-in-law's criminal behavior. We caught the man red-handed, just as I'd caught Marcus. The evidence we gathered prevented Robert from losing his $400,000 home and life savings. You saved my life, Robert told me, not just my money, my actual independence. That case led to others. Detective Rodriguez began referring potential victims to me regularly. and I found myself traveling around the country, teaching elderly people how to fight back against financial predators. Each case reinforced the same lesson: predators count on their victims feeling helpless and isolated. The moment you start fighting back, everything changes. 3 years after Marcus's conviction, I was invited to testify before Congress about elderly fraud. Standing in that hearing room, I thought about Linda and how proud she would have been. "What would you tell other elderly Americans facing similar situations?" the committee chair asked. "I'd tell them that being older doesn't make you weaker, it makes you wiser," I said. "I'd tell them that technology isn't their enemy. It's a tool they can learn to use for protection. Most importantly, I'd tell them that predators count on shame and isolation. The moment you start fighting back, you take back your power." The hearing led to federal legislation requiring enhanced background checks for anyone seeking guardianship over elderly individuals. I was invited to the White House when the bill was signed into law. Today, at 78 years old, I live independently and continue helping other elderly people protect themselves from fraud. I've assisted in prosecuting over 30 cases, preventing millions of dollars in losses and keeping families together. The hidden cameras I bought to catch Marcus have become symbols of something larger. It's never too late to learn new skills, never too late to fight back against injustice, and never too late to discover strength you didn't know you possessed. Marcus called me a senile old fool who doesn't understand anything. He was wrong about the senile part, wrong about the understanding part, and wrong about the fool part. The only fool was the young criminal who thought he could outsmart someone with 73 years of life experience. People often ask how I found the courage to fight back. The truth is, it wasn't courage, it was stubbornness. Linda used to say I was too stubborn for my own good. For once in my life, that stubbornness served me well. If you're facing a similar situation, remember this. Document everything, trust your instincts, and never let anyone convince you that your age makes you helpless. Predators succeed by making victims feel isolated and weak. The moment you refuse to accept their narrative about your capabilities, everything changes. Marcus Wilson is serving 12 years in federal prison. The criminal network he was part of has been dismantled. New laws protect elderly Americans from similar schemes. But the most satisfying outcome is the dozens of people who've avoided becoming victims because they learn to fight back. Each person who refuses to be exploited makes it harder for the next predator to succeed. Justice might move slowly sometimes, but it arrives eventually. And when it does, it's sweeter than any revenge you could imagine. The senile old fool turned out to be smarter than the young criminal who tried to destroy him. And that's a lesson worth sharing with anyone who thinks age makes you an easy target. If you enjoyed this story of justice served, please like this video, subscribe to Justice Chronicles, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever encountered someone who underestimated you because of your age? Let us know how you handled it. Remember, it's never too late to stand up for yourself, and justice always finds a way.